I've saved hundreds of hours of travel research using custom GPTs to find hidden locations and a bunch of other stuff. And today in this video, I'm going to explain exactly how you can do it too. Nobody really knows about or uses custom GPTs for travel yet, and I have saved thousands of hours using them to research my route, plan a ton of different stuff, and find activities that literally nobody else knows about. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. If you don't know who I am, my name's Alex. I am doing a series right now where I travel across India using custom GPTs to completely plan like route and a ton of other stuff. And so I have a lot of background doing this, and not that many other people are. So I think I hopefully can provide some very valuable insights about how to use these, how to make them the right way. Yeah. So I thought it would be a good idea to do like a full little like mini course about what are custom GPTs, how do you make them, how do you like sort of use them the best way, and then why nobody else is using them right now. That's like sort of the first section. And then the second will go into some of the bad use cases and why most people think that ChatGPT sucks when it actually doesn't. And then last, I'm going to explain the best part, which is how I'm using them to travel research. And I use them with a bunch of different other platforms sort of integrated. Like I'll partially research on ChatGPT and then move over to stuff like Google My Maps for map planning, which I'll get into, which I love that. Okay, I'll wait. But yeah, that's basically the scope of this video. And hopefully by the end, you'll understand custom GPTs and how to use them, how big of a deal they are, and hopefully start using them, especially for travel. And I will say, even if you don't use necessarily all the different ways that I'm going to say today, some of them at least will be helpful. And I think that all 5 that I've found have been extremely valuable in their own rights. So I hope some of them help. And I think the best way to present this information is going to be Google Slides. So I made one, and let's get into it. Okay, here we are. I'm in the corner down here, and this is custom GPTs for travelers and how AI has changed the way that I travel completely. So I want you to think about right now how exactly you plan a trip. And this is an international trip that you do not have contacts. You're going there tomorrow to Tokyo. How are you planning your trip? If you think about it for a second, most people would say Google. They'd say blog posts or some other sort of, those are generally the most common ways. And it's probably pretty bad. It takes a long time to plan, and especially for backpackers that are consistently planning, that are on the move always, it's extremely difficult. And especially when time is of the essence and you have to plan for the next days that you're traveling, it's exponentially harder. So custom GPTs will change this. They have changed it for me. I've experienced it firsthand, how fast and efficient they are. And I'd say that's the biggest strength, is how much better your research can get. So this is the first section. What are custom GPTs? What are they? A lot of people don't know what they are, and that is totally fine. This video is for beginners who have not used them before, or experts who've used them a lot and just want to know how I'm using them. So basically, they are a fancy way to say an AI agent or assistant that does a certain thing that you tell it to do. So you can kind of program them. If you have vanilla ChatGPT is what everyone's using baseline. There's different versions of it, but in general, it works in similar ways, the different versions of the vanilla ChatGPT. These are the little art for my custom GPTs. So they're ones that I have programmed to act in a certain way to help me with travel research. And we can get into that by showing you a little bit. So I'm going to get out of this presentation a little bit here. Okay, so here we are in ChatGPT, and I'm going to explain sort of what the layout looks like. If you're a beginner at ChatGPT, you need to make an account, which is free, not hard to do. This is my account here. They automatically put you in the vanilla version of ChatGPT, and that's fine. It's good for a lot of stuff, but the custom GPTs, if you want to make them or use them, will be over here on the side. So you can see I have my entire suite of AI agents that help me travel, like a hidden location finder, cultural event. We'll get into this later. But there is a GPT store where there's a bunch of other ones that people have made. But the point of this is sort of to show you how to make them yourself, to understand them a little bit better. So once you're on the GPT store, you can see this little create button here. And there's two different ways to sort of create them. You can sort of have it help you. You can describe what you want, and then it will put it into like the instructions. The way I prefer to do it is the configure. You get a little bit more control, and in reality, they do the same thing. So when you're configuring it, you can add a photo. You can like generate one or have your own. Give it a name, obviously, and description. And then here the instructions is what really matters, and what goes in here is basically all the sauce of the secret sauce of your GPT, how it's going to behave, how it's going to do a bunch of different stuff. But this is where I've spent a lot of time refining mine and giving them better instructions on how to best help me when I'm traveling. So this will look like a lot of different stuff, and I think I'm going to have another video a little bit later going really in depth into the best ways to have instructions and make them. But for now, it's very easy. You can just put in your instructions in there and how you want it to act. Conversation starters, you can sort of have it give, like at the beginning, you can have some different, paths if other people are using them. Other people are using your GPTs. So for mine, I have a few of those. So I'm editing the video right now, and I realized I forgot to mention file uploads, which are amazing, and you should definitely be using them if you're making custom GPTs. But you can upload, let's say if you're making a GPT for your company, you can upload the employee handbook, and it'll get a ton of context about your company or how you're training people. Or for travel, you can use, let's say you're making one to like rate different airlines, you can upload documentation about each of the airlines. There's a lot of other uses for it, but especially if you've written a lot of documentation about who you are yourself, uploading that would be really cool. There's a ton of use cases, but you should definitely be using files if you are making custom GPTs. And then for the capabilities down here, you can give it access to search the web, to sort of collaborate with you on different documents. That's what Canvas is. Make images, and then like interpret code or data analytics. So those are the different uses. Mine have a variety of these. And then the last thing that's really powerful and really cool with these is you can give them actions basically through coding. I have limited knowledge of this, but I know it's super powerful, and you can hook it up to different platforms. So in the future, I really hope to be hooking some of mine up to different like live data platforms. For example, flights would be really cool for this. Those are the basics of how they are configured. And if you want to make your own, you should go watch the other video that I have that is going to be way more detailed about how to exactly lay things out. Okay, so we're back in the presentation now. This brings us to the second section, the bad. And this is everything that everyone gets wrong with ChatGPT, which is why they give it one shot and then they're like, this sucks, I'm never using it again. And it's just the most like infuriating thing when people are like, oh, ChatGPT sucks. Like, really, have you used it very much? And they're like, well, no, it didn't do what I wanted. So this is the stuff, this is how to get around that. And some expectations. These custom GPTs will not plan your entire trip for you. They will not book things for you yet. That's hopefully coming soon, where agents can take actions for you. I have not figured that out yet. So the next is eliminate the need for travel research. You still have to plan your trip and go do it. They just help you find a lot of stuff and make your life way easier in many ways. And they are not perfect. They definitely make mistakes, and certain use cases have way more mistakes than others. So some of the bad use cases for travel specifically is visas and visa applications. They're really bad at figuring out exactly where you need to apply for stuff. General requirements, they're pretty good, but as far as specifics, you probably want to go to the government websites, and that's probably your best bet. Drone laws, there's a ton of confusing drone laws that confuse humans all the time too, and there's like a ton of conflicting information, and in general, it's just really difficult to find it. So they're quite bad at it, I would say, but that'll probably apply to very few people watching this. So they're really bad at drawing maps and figuring out where things are in relation to each other. So that matters a lot for route planning. If you are using them to plan routes across a country or anywhere, then trying to figure out where things are in relation to each other is getting way better, but there's certain ways around that, which I'll get into a little bit later. And then exact flight prices. It's horrible at trying to figure out what is the exact price of a flight from destination A to B. If you're expecting it to find flight prices for you so you can book them exactly, right now, I have not set up mine to be able to do that. This means we are on to the next section. So the 5 use cases that I have for travel. And we're gonna go really in depth here. It's probably gonna take a while, and exactly how I use these to travel research. So I have one AI that's for hidden locations only. And that's the first one I made. It is so sick. And let me show you how it works a little bit. So this is the route that I have taken in India for this trip, where I'm basically trying to use AI as much as possible to route plan and find different locations. So I started in New Delhi. I flew there from Chicago. It was really cheap flights. If you're looking for good adventures to India, definitely go there. Jaipur and Agra in these 2 cities were basically recommendations from friends. I knew I'd want to go there. So I did not use AI to plan that stuff at all. From here until Nepal, I said, like, basically give me the instructions on exactly where we should go, where the hidden activities are, and this is how it went. So the first spot it recommended us to go on this little spot is Orcha. And that town was insane. No people anywhere. The temples were freaking epic, and it was so worth it. Here are some photos I took there. It was so much fun. It was my favorite town in India that I went, and no other tourists were there. We saw like maybe 2 other white people for 3 days we were there, and it was so awesome. So that's like some of the real world example of how I'm using these. And then this is, I guess I was going to talk a little bit over this while it plays.
I'm in the middle of rural.
Except the audio is going to go now. So this is me, like some of my video series that I'm doing about this, but you can kind of see some of the temples here. There was literally nobody here, and it was such a good recommendation. And basically from AI finding this location and telling me I need to go here, that's how I found Orcha. So we'll go to the next little. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is Google Maps. And I had, like, a lot of people use Apple Maps or Google Maps. Those are the main ones. I want to talk about Google Maps versus Google My Maps. And if you haven't heard of My Maps, especially if you're a traveler, you definitely need to look into it because they're freaking awesome. You can plan a ton of different stuff on there, and basically they're static maps with routes that Google can let you make. So I want to show you a demo of what they look like. And I've made a bunch of different ones in the past, but this is a good example to start with. So in my last trip this year, when I started my solo travels, I went to South America, and it lets you plan out basically all of your travels, and it's so cool. And it's a very cool way to visualize where you've been in the world. I went all over South America, started Dominican Republic, and went down this way. But to use My Maps the best way, there's a ton of different ways you can use it. One of the really, really, really cool ways that you can pair it with a hidden location finder is through pins. And so this is my map of Southeast Asia. For this trip, I was planning to go to a bunch of Southeast Asia. I still am. The way I had it going was I used the hidden location finder to plan different things that would be specifically good for me based on my recommendations. Before I get too in the weeds of how to make a map like this, I want to talk about another difference between Google Maps and My Maps too. So my actual Google Maps has a bunch of pins on it. So it's kind of a ridiculous amount of pins, to be honest, but I separate all of my Google Maps pins by country. And so if someone asks me for my list of pins from, for example, so India, I have 171 places saved. If someone's going to India, I can send them this list, and I have a ton of stuff, like resources saved. That's how I organize my Google Maps. And in terms of Google versus Apple Maps, this is like insanely helpful and way better than Apple Maps, and enough where I definitely would recommend using this over Apple Maps, especially if you're traveling a long time. It's definitely a lot more extensive. So that's sort of the difference between Google Maps and My Maps. I'll have a different tutorial about Google My Maps, about exactly like how to make big maps like this. I think they're really cool. And if you want to look at these, I'll put the link in the description down for basically my South America map. And then let me go back to my categories list. I also have one for Asia for this trip. So if you want to see them and you're curious where I am in the world, you can go look. But this is my Asia map. So before we get too much further, I want to talk about how you can use the hidden location finder to make these as a demo. So basically here are the way that CustomGPTs look when they're finished for the most part. Here's a good example. What are some top places to see in Indonesia? So it's going to look for stuff. It's introducing itself, which is great. And then ask me exactly what kind of locations I'm looking for, how remote it wants them to be. And this is really important because it's going to give me very different results. So for a baseline, I'm going to say give me the most, like the absolute most popular. So it's going to give me probably super generic list that you can find online. Bali is number 1. There we go. So after this is our baseline test, it definitely knows the most popular spots. The really, really amazing part is that it will give you the least popular spots. And so it uses I think it uses blog posts from like little remote places that there aren't many blog posts about and sort of combines them to in a really digestible and amazing way. So I'm gonna have it stop generating these. I'm gonna ask it, so give me 10 or maybe 5 insanely remote spots nobody will have heard of in Indonesia. After it's gonna search around, check some of these blog posts, check what's online, and then give me, so here we go. Here are some spots that you'll expect not to find people. So basically, I haven't heard of any of these. I haven't been to Indonesia yet, but the way that I sort of convert these into a Google My Maps is a really cool sort of addition to this, where I can say, okay, give me a list of these with only the title. And then after it gives me all 5 of these, it should be, here we go, perfect. So I can copy and paste this list into a Google Sheets. So if I make a new spreadsheet, I can put it right here. I'll have all of the different sort of places to go. And then Google My Maps is really cool because it will let you, when you're making one, put in a sheets to like populate the map. So I'm gonna hit create on a new My Map. I'll type in Indonesia hidden spots. Don't come for my spelling if I spell that wrong. So we'll have a different layer here. You hit import, then, oops, I have to actually save this first. So I'm going to download this as a .csv file. And then for our map, we can upload the CSV. And then hit check mark on the first box, continue, and it will populate where these locations are into Indonesia. So we have 4, we only have 4. I think it's because the first one got added as the title, which you can kind of fix that. But for the most part, it works. And in the future, I hope to like automate this where you can just say, make me a map, and it will do it, which it definitely will in the future. But some of these are definitely at remote spots over here that are far parts of Indonesia where probably very few people visit over here. And the only reason I know that is because I've done a little bit of other research about some of the less visited islands. But yeah, like that looks pretty remote. So yeah, so that's a demo of how this works. Now let's get back into some of the other use cases. This is the second use case, and honestly, probably my favorite one for cultural events. So right now, if you are traveling and trying to look for events that really capture the culture of the place you're visiting, you can look on lists, but it doesn't, like, they're sort of year-round lists. They don't know when you're traveling. And so I made a cultural event finder where you just say, I'm going to be here in this region on these dates. What is cultural events happening, like national holidays or anything else like that? And it's freaking awesome. So the ways that I've used this personally, back to the map I've been using. Most recently, I went to this thing called the Hornbill Festival, which is in Northeast India, which is a really cool region of the world worth exploring. But in this region, I said, okay, I'm going to be here for 3 weeks and 2 or 3 weeks, and I want to visit and see some of the culture through an event. And I want you to find some for me and which would be the best for me to go to. And what it found was the Hornbill Festival, which was freaking awesome. They take all these different tribes from around Nagaland and then combine them all into one event that was crazy. It was 10 days. This is some of my photos from here, but like Everyone was so friendly. It was not that difficult to get to. So cool. And something that was definitely off the map. I had no idea about it before. Hadn't heard about it anywhere online other than finding it with this AI stuff. So super crazy. Here's a demo of how it works. So we're gonna go to the cultural event finder here. Let's see, here we go. So the cultural event expert. And I wanna see, we had talked about Indonesia before. So here we go. Generate a list in Thailand of events in Thailand from the fall from September to December. So if I'm going on a trip in some pretty loose dates, I have it set up so it will rank the events for me based off of specific criteria that I put, a bunch of other stuff. But this is the World Heritage Fair, or some of these are more famous, Festival of Lights. Like, yeah, I definitely heard of that. But the cultural significance is really high. So that is something that it would be really cool. So I think I'm gonna give it a little bit more of a challenge now and say, give me events specifically on December, like I'd say 10th to the 20th. So generally more people would be definitely going for a week instead of a month, but I'm gonna tell it to stop generating this. Okay, now you can say, okay, here we go. My trip's for 10 days. I need to find events going on. Okay, perfect. These are the dates for the event. Let's check it out. Okay, and let's say one of these looks interesting. You can sort of find some lists online like this, but to have it be this fast is really good. And then yeah, if you want more info about it, so like, let's say the Red Cross Fair looks a little bit more unique. So I can say, tell me more about the Red Cross Fair. And this is how generally our research is. Basically give it a really wide set of ideas and then have it pinpoint something more, a little bit better, and then I do more research into it. So yeah, you can see, here we go. A bunch of really cool stuff, good insight into Thai culture, and yeah, that looks like something I definitely would go to. So that's a little demo of the cultural event expert, and I use this one maybe the most of all of them. Okay, we're back in the presentation now, and this is the third custom GPT that I have made about route planning. So this is like one of the best, I would say best use cases is figuring out what transportation exists between two places. So if you're looking to like plan really specific stuff, it is sometimes difficult and sometimes will mess up. Sometimes it's really awesome. So I've still used it for that. But trying to figure out like, oh, is there a bus? Is there a train that goes between these? I found some really good results where it gives me a lot of options for the route that I'm planning. So once again, going back to my map, a lot of this route was planned by AI. So from here to Nepal, I had mentioned, that was all basically saying go between these cities via train, via bus. I took the train through a lot of it, took a bus up to Nepal. And then in Bangladesh, that was a crazy part of this trip so far. This yellow line is the boat. It had said take a boat down to this part and then cross to Calcutta through via bus, and then we took a train up north. All of this, basically all that was found with the route planner saying, here's the transportation options, here's what's good for videos. I know that you're making videos about cool things and you should take the train or you should take the boat. And the boat in Bangladesh was absolutely insane. So now let's see how it works. So I'm gonna go to the route planner here. I think let's pick a new region of the world maybe. And maybe something that I know a little bit more about. I'm gonna say I've been to Peru, and I'm gonna say I wanna find a route from from Lima to Bolivia, the border of Bolivia, and some different transportation options between there. So what's a route from Lima, Peru to Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, which by the way is freaking awesome. So you should go there. I've been there on my last trip. It was insane. Okay, route from Lima, Peru to Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. We'll do a question mark. And what are the different options? So you can fly. Take a mix between flight and bus. One of the best things about this GPT is that having a combination of different methods is amazing. So it'll give you a cost estimate. I found these to be, for the most part, pretty accurate. I definitely think that's one thing they'll it'll improve as it gets better at searching online. And then it'll sort of rank, oh, is this a unique journey? Is this easy for foreigners? Is this direct? How is the adventure on the route or the cost? Flying is probably one of the worst for most of those, so it would make sense. The second option would be, an overnight bus, and then another bus. So those are the options. There aren't many trains in South America, so they're giving me some other flight and bus options. Full adventure. You can go by boat as well, if this makes sense, maybe. From Puno to Bolivia via boat. There is a boat between there, I do know that. So yeah, that would be epic. I would love to do that. So, and then it gives you a little summary of sort of, this is the full adventure with the boat. The scenic value would be epic, So I think that is like a really nice, really easy way to try and stem your research. So let's say you're backpacking and you're in a hostel and you need to leave the next couple days to go somewhere new. You can sort of figure out transportation options extremely easily and where to then further research online on booking sites and stuff like that. So that is the route planner and how I use it. So the next one is flight hub locating. And this is going to take a little bit of explanation on how I use this. Basically, flight hubs are places, airports connected to other airports that have extremely cheap flights at like a lot higher rate than other airports. A really good example of this is between Mongolia and South Korea, from the capitals of both those, Ulaanbaatar and then Seoul. And then basically those two places over anything else have extremely cheap flights all the time. So the question is, how do you find these? Most people either use Skyscanner or Google Flights. Google Flights is what I use. I'd recommend it over Skyscanner for a couple reasons, but I think that's a whole nother video in itself. But I use the Explore feature on here, so using Anywhere, which is a really good way to do it, and I'd highly recommend it. And now I'm going to go into a little bit of a demo of how to use the Flight Hub Finder. I think I'm going to do this from my home city of Minneapolis, or St. Paul, but I'll fly from Minneapolis for this case. And this really helps when you're flying for really long distances around the world, especially with multiple layovers and connections and stuff. So from Minneapolis to, let's say, in the next 6 months to India. I did a lot of research about this, so I know a lot. Jaipur is $640, or New Delhi is where I end up flying to, $526. So if I were to say, what are some, I'd ask the Flight Hub Finder, what are some cheaper flight hubs with India inside the US? And the idea is you'd fly from Minneapolis, where generally the flights are quite expensive abroad, to somewhere else. So New York is really good. There's a bunch of direct, that's how I ended up flying there, was through New York. New York's number one. Chicago is really good. Let's go back and check out, if I were to fly from Chicago, this is not something that you would necessarily stumble across in Google Flights, because you're kind of just saying, you'd end up having to try a bunch of different cities, which you could do, but this basically makes it a lot easier to find those. So let's try Chicago here. So now, in order to get to India, it is, let's see, New Delhi is $374. So that's the flight that I took before. And that is way cheaper than $520. And the grand finale is, how much is it from Minneapolis to Chicago in the next 6 months? And that is about $60 to $100, I would say, probably. But if you're going all the way to India, so that's $374 plus 60 or 100, that is like, my math is not mathing right now. That's basically how it works. And it makes it way easier if you're flying with a bunch of connections to figure out which cities you should fly from that have a lot cheaper connections. And this is one of my GPTs that I think I'm going to heavily improve in the future, when I can get it hooked up to, hopefully, a Google Flights API where it has live prices for stuff. And then it will become like insanely more valuable than it is now to figure out and like sort of map the best route of which cities you need to go to sort of figure it out, especially for backpackers. but I have to get it sort of hooked up to that, and that's going to be a process. So for now, it's for finding the flight hubs between places, which is still really valuable and definitely worth it. The last of this set of 5 GPTs I've made is the cultural food finder, or finding cultural food is one of the use cases for it. So basically, I recently had a video that did super well. It got like 16 mil views on Instagram about the street food in India. And luckily, I'm gonna play it here. Luckily, I knew, this is called a dosa. There's a ton of street food in India. There we go. That was real. There's a ton of street food in India, and I actually had a very limited knowledge of Indian street food, even though I would consider myself knowing Indian food before going here. There's a ton of stuff that I hadn't tried, and I did not know what to try without necessarily a local friend telling me, oh, you should try this specifically or whatever. And the way this differentiates itself from Google is you can give it really specific recommendations for foods. When you're in small, specific places, sometimes there's foods really specific to those towns. India is a really good example of this. So I'm going to say Orcha was the name of the town that I visited before. In Orcha, what are some very specific foods that I should try? So it's giving us a list of a bunch of different foods to try in Orcha. Someone who's Indian will definitely need to fact check me on this, but I think there's a ton of good stuff. You know what? Let me try it here for my hometown, and we can test it out. So here we go. This is exactly what I would have said. Juicy Lucy is probably the most staple food of Minnesota. Walleye sandwich, yeah, walleye is like very popular. Hot dish, yeah, it depends where you're gonna go to eat a lot of this stuff, but yeah, these are probably the most Minnesotan foods that you can get. So other than like stuff on a stick at the state fair. This is the cultural cuisine expert and the 5th and last use case of GPTs that I found that have been freaking awesome. So for the last part of this too, there's a lot of things you can do with GPTs that are beyond just travel. And some people, I was surprised to learn this recently, use it as a therapist. So you can speak on voice mode with a lot of the GPTs, and it's really interesting, but a lot of people are able to like work through their problems. And this is definitely something I wanted to try recently, but something that's really cool. And I definitely think would be worthwhile to try and make one that's a therapist. I have one that's a small business strategist that knows about what I'm trying to do with social media and making money that I talk to, I would say as frequently, somewhat frequently. There's a lot of things you can do with content creation assistance. So generating ideas for like a ton of business stuff beyond content creation too. The 4th one, this is a trade expert. I've done a lot of trades with different businesses where I make videos or take photos for them. And it's exceptionally good at finding companies for you to trade with specifically based on your criteria. So if I say I'm a photographer and I'm traveling in like Zimbabwe, and I need to find companies that are in Zimbabwe that have a bunch of, they have really bad photos and their Instagram is really bad. And if I'm really good at social media, it will pair you extremely well. Like it's good at finding the companies that have horrible social medias, which to be honest is most tour companies. But then after you have that, like a trade expert would be a perfect GPT idea and something that I've used it for. This last one's pretty general, but like you can speak to a lot of these. And so if you're doing any like business uses or you want to talk to someone who has a specific like set of ideals, you can have it go on voice mode and be that person. And it is extremely a cool way to sort of figure out new ideas. But those are some of my other GPT ideas. Okay, now that I've explained all 5 of my sort of pre-made GPTs, I wanted to explain the difference between Brad, who is my assistant and knows who I am, and the rest of the 5 that I made. And so basically, he has a bunch of context. I say he, Brad has a bunch of context about who I am, how I like to travel, and specifically what adventures would be good for me. And so knowing this, it is so helpful for research when you're typing somewhere and it already knows so much about you and it just gives it to you about, I don't know. I think I can just show you what I'm going to say. What are some adventures in Bolivia that are specifically good for Alex? Honestly, I haven't heard about much of these, which is a great sign because it really like stems my research out. If I'm going to Bolivia next, then I'm not. But if I were, then, so like certain festivals in La Paz, that would be really cool. Or exploring their emerging wine regions. Like, if something is emerging or not been explored yet completely, that definitely seems like somewhere I would go. I'm gonna have it explain why they'd be good for me. So rare content, yes, that is definitely something I would want to do. Stunning visuals. It definitely is recommending these things for a reason and not just like your generic Google list that is totally difficult to search through. And this is way, way faster. So that's the difference between Brad and the rest of my basically assistants that I've pre-made. And most of the time, I will say I use Brad for most of these same use cases because in his instructions, he does all of these different like tasks. And this now brings us to a very important point, which is, why is this mini course free? The answer, I hate paid courses. I think this should be free. I have never paid for a course. I just feel like gross thinking about it even. I want everyone to be able to like know that these exist and sort of, I don't know, use them for their travel. That is definitely cool. That being said, I can imagine there being two different paths that people go down when they're using custom GPTs like this. So option one is travelers who want an assistant who knows them. And honestly, this is the option I'd recommend for most people backpacking and trying to basically use these a ton of time. They're more time consuming to set up and it requires learning and writing out your thing. Hopefully soon I'll have a bunch of videos about exactly how to do that. But ChatGPT is also $20 a month and making your own requires you to have the higher subscription level, which is a very important part of this that I'll get to later. But that's an important part. The overall value is higher and the recommendations are personalized to you, which is like one of the best things ever, and you should definitely try it. It's $20 a month though, and that's definitely a barrier for some people. So Brad is a custom GPT who knows me. That's one option. The second is travelers who want to use these but have no desire to create one themselves. So these are way easier to use. You do not have to pay for ChatGPT to use them. It will be a one-time purchase from me for mine that I made. Otherwise, there's a bunch of free ones on the store that you can use already. But I put a bunch of work in and getting these ones specifically good for these tasks. And so they are way better than regular ChatGPT or any other travel GPTs that I found on the market. I've tested them and it's not even close. I haven't even been able to find most of the other, like very few people are doing this right now. So I think I would definitely say if you are figuring out between what these options are, if you want to put in a bunch of time learning about these and using them, you should totally make your own and go for it. And if you want to actually just start using them right now, these ones are really good and I made them and you should try it. That is we already talked about making your own. Some more info about my GPTs. Right now, no tools like this exist elsewhere. I have not been able to find any other GPTs that are similar, or even especially searching on Google, like for the cultural event finder, that thing is freaking awesome. And I have not been able to find that anywhere else. They are significantly better than vanilla ChatGPT. We just talked about that, but I definitely believe that they are. And there's one for each use case, so 5 total. I know there's 9 pictures here, but they're for other things too. And then faster and more efficient research. Like these have saved me hours of time. And they're launching soon. So there is a waitlist on my website. The link is in the description below. If you're interested and you want to use these, they're not out yet. I'm sort of gauging interest and we'll probably do like a small group release just to see how people like them. So as far as the waitlist goes, it is out now on my website and you should go check it out if you are interested in using the GPTs that I made. But otherwise, let me know in the comments and tell me how these ideas are when you're trying them, or if you want help in other ways. But there's a ton of videos I'm going to make about these. I really believe that it's the best and most efficient way to travel, and they are super cool. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed the video, and leave me a like if you did.